guys, Kurt here. This is part 2 of our interview with Max Allyn of the Recording Fund. Enjoy. And, you know, way earlier on, you were talking about how, like, eventually you want to go global, but you got to learn how to swim in the pool before you swim in the ocean. It's just the pool is more complicated than the rest of the ocean. You know, we have
and
4
it's filled with
performance
piss.
rights. Yes. 4 performance rights organizations, an infinitesimal amount of sub-publishers.
Yeah.
And the markets are just so broad in this country. So
yeah. I mean, I think that ultimately, you know, it'd be really cool to go worldwide. But if we look at the rest of the world, the rest of the world has the support at a governmental level already. Most developed nations have many music programs that help people make recordings. Like Courtney Barnett, her breakout record was paid for by the Australian Council for the Arts. They helped her tour America and become like who she is.
That,
you know? Tons of
that
Canadian
goes to a
artists.
conversation of like music is part of the cultural heritage of the wherever you are, right? Of any landmass or people. And the fact that we don't invest in it, like any kind of infrastructure, like we should be investing in it the same way. And I'm talking about like government subsidized investment, like where they're putting money towards like a heritage fund, the same way that we do national parks, because like our musical history and our musical language in this country, because it's so diverse and it comes from African American slavery, it comes from the mixture of like Latin based, and it's taken from all over the world and like reiterated, yet we don't invest in it the same way that like you mentioned, like Australia does. Like maybe this could be a step where you guys.
Well, we left everything to the market. We left everything to the market, and I think that while that has proven to make one of the richest nations on earth, not everything should be left to the market, to a free market. And that's what we did. When you look at the amount of money that comes down through the National Endowment of Arts, last I checked, but we might want to fact check this, I think that it's around $180 million yearly, which is a lot of money and a tiny drop in the bucket for the size of nation that we are. And I think around 10% of that goes to music. So that's $18 million. Which is a lot of money, but I have never, ever in the history of my music career, maybe I'm looking in the wrong places, but this is also why I'm coming from a music industry standpoint. I've never met anybody that actually did a record funded by any of that NEA money, that endowment money, right? Yeah.
The invisible hand all that of the money goes to, has been giving me a wedgie for the last 100 years.
Yeah, because all that money also goes to orchestral stuff. It doesn't go to like the music industry. That's what I think that's where we're coming from, is like goes to orchestral things, which is great. It goes to like new avant-garde composers and these other things, but it doesn't.
I really only hear about it on NPR. Really,
right?
NPR reports on a set of things that don't exist in my reality. Sometimes. You know, I'm like, what is like. Really? Where did you find that? You know, Cherry Glazer. Like, what's the deal? Like, I guess that's just straight up KCRW Cherry Glazer. But
there we go. Oh, KCRW.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm a KPCC boy.
Yeah, is that the one with Larry Mantle?
Yep. Larry Mantle has insane patience. People say the most outrageous stuff on Air Talk, and he just rolls with it. Like, people get on there just say crazy racist stuff, and he goes, "It's nice to know you people are out there. Moving on." And it's like, that was on public radio.
Yep.
I mean, what else are you gonna do at that point? Like, it's not like you could Alex Jones it and fire him up even more, and
right?
Make money off of it, which is. And speaking of capitalism.
Well, leave everything to the market, man. The market solves all issues. Like. It doesn't. It doesn't. I think that's really what we have left everything to the market, and that's kind of the place that we find ourselves as Americans at the moment. Not to get too
existential
deep into
crisis
macro.
that is
otherwise known as a free fall through hell. Like, I don't know.
The supposed saving grace is that BMI and ASCAP are at least non-profits, so you just pay a yearly fee, and it doesn't matter if you create anything. But CSAC
Yeah.
is for profit, and I work for a composer he's a CSAC member, and your membership is conditional. If your music isn't pulling in money, they're going to boot you from CSAC. Wow. Because you have to be generating income. Yeah. So there's a lot of like, you're going to see more production music people on CSAC really than you'll see like famous musicians. I mean, you'll see like Bob Dylan is a CSAC member, but the fun thing with CSAC is you have to be invited. But that's capitalism right there, and it makes its money. And I don't know.
Well, that might actually be a working model where there's not just one PRO. There are multiple PROs satisfying different parts of the market, right? Now, obviously, that gets really confusing when you have the two. You have just BMI and ASCAP stuck in the copyright mandate. CSAC's over here. And then you have a panel of copyright judges that literally, like, they were putting out an ad finding a new judge, like, not 6 months ago.
No way.
And these are the like literally on Craigslist, they're like looking for copyright judge for DC. Must be, and you're like, wait a second,
Very
these are the people that are
leaning.
Yeah, exactly.
Older judge.
And these are the
must
people
have beard.
these are the people that are judging and ruling on, when David Israelite goes and fights for writers' song rates, he's fighting literally Goliath, right? He's fighting the most money-backed companies in the world, the Apples, the Googles, the Amazons, and they're like, want to pay people less. And then, the copyright board, like, literally has an ad out trying to find a judge. Like, I just... Like,
if Philip K. Dick was writing this novel, he would make all the judges deaf. Because deaf judges rule better on music.
Yeah. No bias, man.
We can only read sheet music.
Yeah.
In Braille.
It was 1976.
Yeah.
The 1978 Copyright Act.
So it's all these things that this mission starts. It's in the almost the laughable. You couldn't make this up. The way our music industry actually works. And again, all of us are like carrot on the end of the stick. Like, I want to be famous. Like, let me get there. Why? It's not even just for the fame. Some of us are just looking to pay the bills, man. We're just trying to like do something other than the grind, and we should have the right to actually do that. Like, I hope, right?
You're sitting in a room with 90% of the people here who had those aspirations of, like, just not even music fame, but just being able to pay the bills that all went into other industries. Like, Adam's in teaching, I'm in government. Kurt's still doing OnlyFans?
I do air conditioning
feet
repair.
pics on Farmers Only. My bad.
Yeah,
I always get them confused.
Farmers only. Yeah.
It's just a bunch of rulers that I throw in a field.
Yeah.
I'm gonna deflect. I'm gonna keep deflecting, Leo.
Yeah.
Adam had to flee the country, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys went to Nam. He went to Nam.
Yeah, you guys went to Nam. I went to Vietnam.
Yeah.
Adam, tell everyone, the listeners and watchers, if I upload this to YouTube, but tell everyone how different it is in Vietnam, just working wise, just being a professional over there.
So I'm a teacher over here, and I work 8 hours on Saturday, 8 hours on Sunday, and I work about 4 hours during the week, and I have more money than I ever needed. Like, I get to pay all my bills, save money. I can go do whatever I want. I get pedicures and manicures now every week.
Adam, you're wrong, because this is the greatest country on earth, and I'm actually getting angry that you're talking about.
You communist.
Yeah.
Right?
Manicured bootstraps to pull yourself up.
We're going to need to carpet bomb you again. I know we haven't done it since the 70s, but I'm going to have a talk with the... Henry Kissinger's still alive.
Henry Kissinger, still is.
Well, we drank the Kool-Aid, man. That's, as a nation, we have totally drank the Kool-Aid. Like that, I think that the music industry definitely represent. Like this is getting pretty deep into it, but the music industry is a microcosm of you too can enjoy the American dream. Put it out there, you can be famous. And look, I have a pretty dang good life. That is probably a lot of that probably comes from said American dream, but most of America and most of us, we work our ass off to barely have anything at the end of the day, to not even be able to pay for a piece of the land that we were born to, right? And that's what the music industry is like too. They were like, oh yeah, no, your music's worth a third of a cent of it, like per stream. And they're like, you got to just be super famous to make even like $1,000, like it's,
You mentioned that where the current America that we're living in is kind of like this sinking ship or just like a falling nightmare. The music industry is like the buffoon, not sitar. What's the lyre player like on the ship of the like as it's sinking?
The Titanic. Yeah, it's
we're not sinking like the Titanic. We're soaring like the Hindenburg.
Yeah. And then get straight down.
It's the Stephen Colbert joke. Sorry.
Plum blum dirigible.
Make sure to attribute that in the credits.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Colbert.
Yeah.
Have me on your show.
So Max, you were talking about where we were talking about the PROs earlier, and it got me thinking. Do you think it would be better off for the music industry to have more PROs rather than having just the few that we do have, but the four major ones, and then
right?
Do you think that would have a good impact on the music scene?
Well, I think we get really deep into the weeds here, in that there's a lot of complexities going on here. Like, so the PROs, like for instance, broadcast television, they don't want to deal with you. They want to deal with the PRO, right? Mm-hmm. For a new PRO to come to the table and get licensed to actually deal with the broadcast system, which I know the broadcast TV is maybe it's on its way out over the next 20 years. It's not going anywhere. Those companies are still going to control media, right? And so you still got to deal with them in one way or another. So for another company to come to the table, a brand new, say, startup, right? Silicon Valley has this idea. We're going to be that we know how to do this. We're going to leverage blockchain to bring, Ledger 3.0 to an antiquated system. Are they going to get a seat at the table? I think would be a really interesting question, because it's actually a secret, the information that the PROs exchange with the broadcast companies and vice versa. It's not even your data anymore. So like when your song gets played on a television show and ASCAP uses Sound Mouse to find it, I say, hey, Sound Mouse, where did my song play? They say, we can't tell you, that's not your information. And I'm like, well, it's my song. And so, yeah, it's crazy. It's not your data. It's the broadcast company's data, and it's ASCAP's relationship with them. So do I think that we would benefit? I think most things would benefit from different mechanisms in there, but I don't necessarily think, like, while I think there's crazy things with ASCAP, like when you sign with them, I'm an ASCAP member. When you sign with them, you waive your right to audit their books, right? Whoa, whoa. They're still survey based. Whoa, holy shit. What are we doing? Like in 2022, they're just a sample of what's going on, But I also think that they do some good, or it's not all bad. And so I think that would it benefit? Yeah, I don't see them getting a seat at the table. I don't see even the money. I just we need a system-wide reboot of the actual sort of accounting through the whole system. And when you talk to like BMI, they think their accounting system actually makes sense, So
I think what you were trying to say through all that is down with capitalism. Isn't that like number one rule of capitalism? Like competition creates more diversity and you can buy more goods. It's like, nope, you got two. You can choose from two of them. CSAC is the crazy drunk uncle over there. He might invite you to sit on his lap, but you only got two.
Well, yeah, and it's
grass, gas, or ass.
Yeah, we're
that's what CSEC is.
Yeah, and look, like actually, again, like that might actually work for a certain set of people, right? That might actually make sense. When you look at the amount of people that are on, like, BMI, I think covers like 1 million writers or something, or $1.5 million. Probably ASCAP does the same. Now, probably 90% of those people just have registered their songs. Like I have a really great old friend he's like, man, BMI's never sent me any checks. I was like, well, what would they be sending you checks on? Like,
it costs more money to send the check than what you made.
Checks, but also like, like this is he as an artist, he does not know where the money comes from. This is part of that education thing. He's like, well, I signed up for them and they should be paying me. Well, like, where would they be? Who would be paying you that they would be collecting on, right?
When I worked for Steve Weatherby at Sovereign, one of the things I'd have to do throughout the week, just would be matching income sources. So, going through and micro pennies to whatever song was made, and it was such a tedious process. But what I was doing was I was matching income that Harry Fox, who has a total monopoly on connecting the dollars to the artist, just didn't bother. They didn't bother doing it because it was micro pennies. It wasn't worth it. But when you add up all those micro pennies, I think one time I looked at the total, it was over $12,000 of unclaimed royalties.
Yep.
Because Harry Fox is just like, you're not Beyonce. I'm not gonna bother.
Well, that's a good point. Like, should there be more Harry Foxes? Absolutely. And I think you see some of these companies coming in and trying to break those monopolies up, pushing against Harry Fox, pushing against some of those mechanicals. In the performance rights space, yes, there should be more. I don't even know what it would look like though, because it's even antiquated to say like there should be more in America. Like the fact that we have neighboring rights issues, and then it's like music's this international thing, but if you don't have a neighboring rights agreement with, you're like, my friend Tina gets she's on the board. She has like somebody in Russia is playing one of her songs, Shazamming it all the time, and she's like, how am I supposed to get those 45 streams a day? How am I supposed to get that, right?
Through
it's a neighboring rights issue. Through exactly, right?
I think
it's
you need to go to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kurt, you said micro penis, right? Not micro pennies. Micro penis.
Yeah, there's 12,000.
I wanted the audience to be able to relate.
For the audience too, for those who don't know who
Only Feet. Onlyfeet.com.
Oh my!
For those who don't know what Harry Fox is,
OnlyKurtFeet.com?
they're rights management and collector and distributor of mechanical license fees. They're owned by CSAC, so they're a service that you would pay as an artist or through your PRO to collect fees or distribute fees on your behalf. They're kind of the middleman between the label and the PROs.
It's Harry, the name Harry, not Harry as in, like, I mean, what I would put into Google.
Harold, yeah. There's nobody
Gerald.
named Harry Fox. It was just the Harry Fox agency. But
It's just a fox named Harry.
yeah, Harold Fox. I wanted to ask you, Max.
All foxes are hairy.
Logistically, apart from funding, what are some serious roadblocks the Recording Fund would be facing going forward with this process? I mean, we already talked about outreach and finding how to do that effectively, but on the more logistical side of it, what are you guys really facing? What walls are you trying to bring down?
Right. I think that question's probably best looked at like if we had a substantial donation tomorrow. That's always the question. What would you do with X amount of dollars in the account? And I think first and foremost that would be spread that out over some years and try to learn from every funding round. Don't try to disseminate $100,000 in 1 year. Try to figure out what you're. Try to learn from every round. Because we're going to learn most of the impediments in those moments. Like there's as much planning as I can do now. We're going to learn it in the actual, how does it go through? I think as we were talking about the creative,
Learn by doing.
When we were talking about the creative process earlier too, another space where this can kind of get sour is that it's ultimately as a nonprofit, as a programming grants making organization, it's ideal that there's a final product. And so while we want people to experience the creativity of the studio, if they go in and dilly dally and there's no follow through to an actual creation, that's not technically the best use of the funds. There might be a space and way in which we can fund those sorts of times, maybe in certain studios, but what we do need actually at the end of the day is for people to make said final product, because ultimately that's what is going to help me go forth and fundraise, and us in the nonprofit world. They don't like the word marketing, so they say like development, but really, go forth and market our this idea, show the world what it is, which will bring more people forward. Every day, that I go out there and I try to market it, more people come forward and say, "Hey, whoa, wait a second! Like, let me talk to you. Like we should have a Zoom, and like maybe I know these people or I know those people." So, so that's an interesting
podcast with a bunch of losers.
No, I get on a podcast with winners. I'm with winners.
I want to win.
Yeah.
So your lawyers don't like esoteric, like, hey man, we were real vibing in the studio. You need to actually have a product, is what you're trying to tell me.
Well,
okay.
the lawyers don't. At the end of the day, the lawyers aren't going to care. But if we had no product to show, at the end of the day, no song to play for anybody, no recording that we funded to show to donors to create sustaining philanthropy from organizations, I can't in at the right time, I can't go to Universal Music Group with the help of our friend Steve Weatherby and say, hey, I really want you to get involved with this. I think this is the best charity in town for you guys. But we really, none of our artists have actually made a recording yet. Like they're just kind of like, they're just vibing in the studio, right? So this is a bit of an impediment.
You should have been there, man.
It was really good, and that I want people to have that downtime in the studio. When I have people in the studio, I'll totally dilly-dally with them all day, knowing that kind of affects my ability to pull the day off in a way that, helps me be a good business person in that part of my life as a producer. But really, trying to kind of get both those things to happen. Yes, have a good time, but yeah, what we have to do is get that done. And ultimately, it's easiest if there is somebody that's kind of pushing that forward. So in projects where there is a producer, well, that producer's job is to create and deliver final product,
Right.
That's the goal.
Oh my God. I just realized a producer produces things. Holy shit.
What?
It took me 35 years. All right, guys, good night. Damn it.
Shut it down.
You learned everything you had to know.
Erase this whole thing. We did it.
Do you
It's
teach that
like-
in Vietnam, Adam?
I could,
That's the
yes.
thesis.
Yes, I do.
A producer
There's no
produces. They're like,
copyright over here, so
no
don't
shit,
even-
dude. We're doing advanced calculus and we're in 5th grade.
Communism.
You guys are fucking idiots in America.
Wow.
Adam, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say. So, Max, how do you think you're going to overcome an issue like that, and like making sure that you're going to get products out from artists that you do give grants to?
This is a great question. I think that I think that there's a layer, again, when we're looking at the drive, the dedication aspects, then obviously there's the diversity. But when we're kind of looking at those first couple layers, I can even see in the first realm of people starting to write to me that there are people that write a pretty cohesive, this is what I want to do. Please write me up, please count me into whatever like pre-application list you have. And then I have people that say, I need money to pay off my record. I think that some of these things, not to judge, but I think that there's some sort of institutional gut feeling that we're going to have to start creating of like this somehow in the application process, we can discern that this applicant is really interested in making something. And while again, I want to help people make their first recording, which might not be that pretty and it might be something else. Hopefully the application process can help us kind of discern, a range of that. Again, when I say non-merit, I have people say, well, no, you're just creating merit in a different way. And I guess we are. Maybe non-merit is not the best way to put this, but changing it, not based off what you look like or how, are you commercially viable, but we do have to create some sort of system that, because at the end of the day, Recording Fund has to be a good steward of charitable donations. And if we aren't, we will not exist. We will not exist into the future. People will not give us the time of day, But if we can satisfy both those things, allowing all sorts of music to be made, but finding a way to, on certain projects, help kind of pull it through. Toby, who I was with today, Springsteen's engineer, he said, like, look, on some of those records, he having done this, he's like, man, I've been in a studio with an artist without a producer, and I'm just the engineer, so I don't really have the position to move it along. He's like, we'll lose days. We're fumble dinking around, we're doing things. And so he's like, look, you're gonna have to figure out how to identify those projects and figure out how to put some bumper rails on that to get it to the end of the process. But I think some of it's the application process, some of it's hope. I guarantee you that we'll biff it on a couple of them, though.
When I was learning how to play guitar, my guitar instructor is a music producer, and he was telling us there were a couple things. I don't know if it's this way anymore, but for one, he said, recording time is not rehearsal time. You come in, you're recording the song. This isn't time to, practice over and over, because this is people's lives. These are the producers, and it's the money from the recording fund. This money has to be put to good use, and you want to have fun with the process. You need a producer in there to help push things along, but it's not time to rehearse. And the other thing he said too is, when labels are looking at artists, and again, this is the part I don't know if this is the way it is anymore, but if an artist has a solid, good 2 or 3 songs, what they want to see is that you can keep writing like that. Mm-hmm. So odds are, sometimes that's kind of what, sometimes that's like what a small advance is for. Come back with 12 more songs. Yeah. And they don't care about the quality of the songs. They want to see that you can write 12 songs. Mm-hmm. And some of them are going to be good, some of them are going to be bad. But do you have your creative process down? Yeah. Do you have something that they can put
Are you driven?
Time into?
Are you dedicated? That part's not all that different. There is some level of identifying and weeding out a little bit of the riffraff, if you will, and I actually want to, out of the entire team that's put together right now, I have the widest. I'm like, come on, everybody, and I have one board member that's like, dude, you got to reel that puppy in, man. You got to put some stakes in the ground. And I'm like, well, that's what you guys are here for, I'm not going to reel it in. Like, help me develop. But I love what you're saying. I wrote it down. The studio is not time to rehearse. And I think that there's some ways that we can tell people, okay, you're doing this, but there is a little bit of it's a pre-op kit, you're going to go and do the operation. We're going to give you some information on the backside and a consult, but up front, you're going to make a recording. How do you plan to make the best of that day? And actually we have to definitely review a little bit of when an artist says, here's my budget, here's what I'm asking for. If they say, hey, we're going to record 10 songs in 8 hours, or in 6 hours at the studio.
Is it acoustic? Is it all one instrument?
It's not that it's not impossible, but we need to understand a little bit more about that. We need to crack open the is that possible? Is that even feasible for you guys? How are you doing it? Is it just a guitar? Is it a band? Does the producer agree with that? Because lots of times as a producer or as an engineer, you have somebody that come in, they'll be like, all right, I just want to throw the final vocal on my 14-track record, but I want to do it in an 8-hour day. And I'm like, and you can't judge that. You could just say well, from my experience, I could spend the whole day doing 2 final vocals with you, and that would be well worth it. Right. And so, there's a level of expectations meeting, what does the actual engineer think? Because it's the money of it again. But again, if we're flowing the money in a way that it's not coming out of the artist's pocket, but it's also not going into their pocket, I think that there's opportunity for that to be a little bit of a different dynamic, but we actually have to learn by going through it. So I think some of the back
and you have
to the
to
hurdles.
account for, right? It's just the actual recording process itself.
Yeah.
And that doesn't account for red light syndrome too. You could have a song known like you can play a song as if you were breathing, but once the recording light comes on, you're dropping the ball.
Yeah.
And it happens to everyone all the time.
Yeah.
And so 10 songs under 8 hours, like you better be nailing every single song every time. And that's just, we're not machines. We're humans. We're going to make mistakes, especially with something intricate that requires you to be on time.
I'll tell you.
Requires you to be in pitch.
That proposed budget sheet, though, that's a dead giveaway. Like, hey, man, we're going to have to re-budget the heroin money.
Yeah,
like the cocaine,
right?
The coke
no,
budget.
I think that's exactly now, and because that's like I love artists, man, but on what planet do you just say, well, here's a ton of money? I mean, the last 120 years have shown us what happens with advances. They're like, hey, your advance is supposed to cover the cost of your recording too. They get snorted. They get, crazy things happen, man. You read hear the stories of like what Jefferson Airplane was doing. Man, they put a basketball court in the studio, in the live room. Right?
Awesome. That's what I want to get back to. That's the glory days of the music industry.
Right.
They just give me a bunch of money.
Yeah. And so, no, I think making artists actually. I think artists have to come to the table. They have to get their, they have to get their proverbial shit together to kind of play ball. Like we're like, hey, you want to be a part of this music industry? We want to help you make art and be a part of this music industry. And so how about we, here's how you have to participate to get into that. You have to come to the table with, some real details.
That's something that I struggled with as a creator and as a music. Like the first 3 years of me trying to record with my band was like hurdle after hurdle, trying to figure out just like, how do I get into a studio? How do I record? I don't have money to do so. Yeah. You're addressing all that. But then on the back end of that, like I was kind of joking about like the heroin budget on a line item, right? That for the proposed artist, but there's a huge substance abuse problem, and it's like a toxic relationship that a lot of musicians have. I went through that myself. I'm gladly on the other side of it, but like that's a huge part of like the process.
It's a big part of it. Yeah. Well, you're right that, at least striking it from the line items, it's, it is a tricky space to work with artists. We could offer them this, I've worked with artists that just, they love to sabotage themselves. Time to show up and time to deliver. Blasted,
Diva.
Drunk, drugs, car wreck, like whatever it is. We as humans, we do these things. I think that it's hard to plan for that, but we're just going to accept that humans are messy. And again, we're going to attempt to ascertain some level of information beforehand and then prepare them for that. Maybe there's even the more I think about it, the upfront care kit sounds like a novel of things. It's probably going to freak out anybody before they make a record. But, I think that some of that does exist in there. What is it to, just address some of that. The studio will be scary, and so far the people that I have found that are interested, they have very good, again, just because I was with him earlier today, Toby, after so many years of, he's in his 70s now. He's been making records since he was, in his early 20s, right? And he when he deals with young artists, he lives in a very tiny town in Montana as well, and he records people. He probably doesn't really need the money as a retired individual, but he records them, and they come in, they're like, oh my God, I'm in the studio, and he tries to just bring them down to the ground. It's like, have you ever been in a studio? It can be a little overwhelming. It's just equipment. And and he's like, a studio is just a studio. These are just tools, and I'm going to do this. Yeah. And they're like levitating.
It's a tool shed for music.
Yeah, totally. They're levitating because they're with the dude that, recorded these songs. And he's like, well, when you get to know him, he's like, well, I just put a microphone in front of a person and it does a thing. He's like,
they wrote the song. Yeah.
he didn't write it. And he's like all about high fidelity and all about just like, well, I just put a microphone in front of it. And you're like, well, what do you mean you just fucking put a microphone in front of it, Toby? He's like, well, I just put a microphone in front of it. I'm like, what microphone, dude? Like, like
that's his autobiography. It's just one page. Put a microphone.
Yeah.
Put a mic in front of it.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, he is trying to get people to, he's looking at the fact that they're probably going to freak out in their first few takes and start trying to bring them down. Now, that's the way one person deals with it. Again, I can't recreate that experience in every studio. So how is there a way to, there's some level of like addressing some of that up front. So to just, as they say in like Buddhist traditions, trying to set the conditions, the optimal conditions for the best outcome, for your mind to release, for you to kind of let it all down, what would it be? What is it to set the optimal conditions for that?
When we first got on here, you were mentioning different, like paying the producer, paying a recording engineer, paying, kind of the Albini method of just like, these are jobs. I'm hiring a janitor to come clean up the spill over here. You're doing the same thing in the studio setting, and not to not glorify it, but like they're jobs. These are practical. These are trades, and kind of introducing that, like when you put that in perspective, I feel like that's a way to like humanize and bring people back down to the ground, or like, oh, these are working, like we see Tom Cruise in Top Gun, but like the movie was made by 99.9% of like the people behind the scenes that created that movie, right?
Yeah. No, I really love that perspective. What that also brings to my mind is the idea that in this model, if you get picked up by a label or you're dealing with label people, you are getting schmoozed out the ass. They're taking you out to dinner and lunch and buying you drinks and telling you how great you are. They're like, let me show you to this person, let me show you to that person. And that you're right, there's an opportunity, if we did this differently within the music industry in this one funding model, to just be like, hey, we believe in you. And here's some tools and ideas here, whatever recording fund can do to create the optimal conditions. These are the people that you're working with. These are the functions, the jobs that they're going to do. And by the end of it, you're going to have a recording. And we're not like, hey, let's take you to Bardot or something, or take you, to something really fancy.
We're going to Five Guys.
Yeah, like, hey, let's take you to Nobu and Malibu and buy a $500 sushi dinner to butter you up to make you feel that important. Right, we're just starting with the idea you are important. You're making music and this is really cool, and just change because all that's false. All of that's false behavior anyways,
and the end product is ba with the ba.
It's just to make to trick you into giving up your publishing rights.
It's to trick you into something. It's to trick you into I know managers that build their artists up to be rock star, to be that sort of thing, so that they actually become that sort of thing. It's some sort of like, we need to create you to be this. I don't think that that's true. I think we just be really practical about it. Like you said, these are positions and roles and jobs that are being executed by people that know how to make records, or they're in the same, they're learning just like you, I think that we can take some of that glamour and glitz out of it and be like, it's cool. Let's make a cool record. Go ahead and make whatever you're going to make. And we're not going to butter your biscuit on this whole thing. So
biscuits.
It seems you're also walking a fine line too of agreeableness between the artists and the professionals who are going to record their work. For like more, because some of these songs are going to have to be commercially viable if the artist knows what they're doing. But when you get into a studio and you have a producer who knows how to make it commercially viable, there's that level of creative control that needs to be given up by the artist. And I that might be a huge barrier, or not a barrier, but a huge thing for you guys to figure out is, are you going to have artists who are going to be okay giving up some of their creative control over the song to the producer purely for logistical reasons? That producer knows what it needs to be successful in some way. Otherwise, it can just be the artist, take it and go. But I don't know. like you said, at the end of the day, that's not up to you.
Kurt, are you kicking me out of the band?
I didn't want to talk about it with Max
The
here.
fuck, man?
Yeah.
We don't need 3 didgeridoos. 2 is enough.
No, you didgeridoo didn't.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
I think that some of
But
that yes, that's going to happen. I think in mostly in cases that, like, say the artist says, "Hey, this is what I want to do and this is who I want to do it with." They've kind of already they either have a relationship with that engineer and producer or producer engineer already.
Yeah, that's what I was
or
gonna
they've
say.
already
They're
kind of
doing
said,
research.
like, that person does the work that I want. And having produced a lot of records, yeah, there's a point at which they're kind of like, do I give you over control yet? But there's also a point where they, like, artists kind of say, like, I know how to get it this far. I know how to sing the song. I don't know how to do anything else on it. Like, I know how to tell you when I don't like it, and every producer figures out how to deal with that. Because also at the end of the day, that again, it's contract for hire. The producer is creating it under contract. And obviously there's things to work out in a contractual sense. Is there do these originated from recording fund contracts deal with things like points, right?
Yeah, I mean it's all stuff that might need to be negotiated anyway, and it's just the nitty-gritty, nuanced stuff too.
Yeah, Max. So I was actually wondering. Earlier, I heard you saying that you wanted to get like new artists in.
Yeah.
But in order to get things commercially viable, would you give grants to maybe studio producers that maybe just got out of a contract or something like that? Because, like you were saying, they do know how to make something viable. And as we know from the record industry, like, what is it? Like 5% of the artists pay for the other 95% that don't make anything or make anything viable.
Yeah. That's definitely going to happen. And again, I think that it's going to really, my probably naive sense of it is that that's going to shake itself out in just who applies. I think, again, there are going to be people that are actually pretty well aware of how to make a record, and they're just struggling to afford to make a record, and they will fit within our applicant process in one way or another. And there's an opportunity to, they're already capable of making something pretty great, and we can just kind of help that process along. I think that there's also even really interesting opportunity for if there's an artist that says, hey, I live here, but I don't really know where to start, but I've kind of made a recording, but, I'm kind of looking for I'm looking for a producer, or I'm looking for a studio. There's a lot of producers that have already kind of thrown their hat into the ring of like, I just want to be on the radar. And I've said, like, look, we will have a database, and if somebody's looking, maybe we can pair. And now in the early years, maybe there is a place where we do play a little bit of matchmaker. If you don't know who's going to do it, maybe we can match it up with the right people,
That's cool. That's a cool idea.
And only just to create, again, we're not going to own that. So it's like, how does that, obviously something cool could happen, but that it is an opportunity actually for us to help create, especially in the early years when, you're right. Everybody's looking for, there needs to be something that, sounds like it could play on NPR. That's like ultimately the goal. Is like, I need, you know what I'm saying? Like in terms of getting that sort of notoriety. And so, I think that there's ample opportunity to have really cool recordings happen with relatively new artists, maybe not the absolute beginners, but that get the opportunity to work with reasonably seasoned professionals.
That'd be cool. Yeah, the database, and then prorated rates, maybe? No.
Well, and some of them,
but things to work in there.
Look, some producers, if they want to be a part of it, I think they would say, I'll totally give you, we can, how cool would it be, like, to be able to do, like, I have a really good friend named Gus Seifert. He does, like, all the Bedouin stuff, and he did Dr. Dog. He's like one of my favorite producers ever. He's like, every sound that guy has ever made is the coolest thing ever. I'm sure his rate's pretty steep, but I bet he would work on, if it felt right to him, I bet he would totally give a rate that was reasonable. It would be what Recording Fund, in the realm of what Recording Fund would actually fund, which will actually be, reasonably, it will not be anywhere close to the major label stuff whatsoever. So I think we're just going to be dealing in a certain realm of music anyways. But I think there would be a handful of artists and producers that would actually come down and make cool things just because they believe in the process, and it can be time limited or it can fit the way that they need to work, but it's questionable. Maybe for really big producers, they should donate their time because it's hard to justify that we pay them. But simultaneously, if our goal is to help artists make recordings, and it's shown that they're giving us a big discount anyways, I don't know that that's actually too outside of the realm.
So how can we help you? What's next? Like how are ways that we can support you with the podcast, and then what's next that you see like moving forward?
Well, as much word of mouth connection from person to person that you can imagine. Everybody, every artist, like we talked about that social thing. It's really just important because it's an optics thing, and it helps kind of create the sense that this is growing, that it kind of helps people that scope those things first before they get on a call with me or a meeting. It helps that sort of side. So the whole social sphere, and I think that naturally lends its way, pushes in the direction of the people that are interested in giving. They will ultimately reach out. Now, I'm in a big process of, kind of reframing what is philanthropy. Well, philanthropy is an act. It's not an amount, right? And so for us to just say, actually, anybody's capable of giving, and, it could be $5, but kind of really mobilizing the idea that it's not just the big whales that I, as a fundraiser, am out there trying to gather, but it's actually getting everybody to realize they can have participate in actually growing the momentum that this organization needs. What we need is momentum, and there is a lot of great momentum happening. And like you said, through messaging, and the messaging that will make me go more white than I already am, that messaging grows the momentum, and it just kind of keeps it going. And that momentum grows. I think that as those things grow, it turns more into a thing where a random new follower also says, oh yeah, $5, $10, cool, $15, or they're in a different position and they can do something different. It's the act. I think
it's something.
It's the act. It's not the amount. It's the act, and kind of reframing that and getting that sort of space rolling. Because ultimately, I did choose the model of this as a cash intensive model. It's not like give us a guitar and we'll give it to somebody. It's a specifically cash intensive model.
All those small micro penises add up. To a big amount. So, and the efficacy of crowdsourcing is you get a big old giant penny penis. I mean, like I will.
When did we talk about Sigmund Freud again? Sorry, go ahead, Leo.
Siegfried and Roy, the lion dudes, the tiger dudes. Michael Jackson recorded their theme song, by the way. I used to have it on CD. Yeah, I mean, as far as like what I've noticed from music circles is like everything is word of mouth, right? Like, oh, have you heard of this band? Which, by the way, I saw Dr. Dog on their farewell tour.
Amazing,
beautiful. Oh, so sad. It was so sad, but also one of the most beautiful shows. We'll do our part as far as like our own music circles, people that we know up here, and the 4 people that I talk to up here in Portland. But and listeners too, listeners of Just One Song on the podcast, like we'll be sharing these links on the episode in our links through our email campaigns. But go ahead, Adam.
How do people donate if they want to donate?
You can donate at recordingfund.org. Click the donate button. We are currently in the latter half of a $20,000 raise, and we do have quite a ways to go. But we'll just continue fundraising, and so there's always opportunity to donate. And donating right now is going towards, if we can hit $20,000, we are going to make one song with 10 to 12, maybe 13 artists. So 10, 12, 13 artists, one song each. And we're going to try to get that to be as diverse across the country as possible, and use that to just keep the machine rolling forward. And that will be that will be the first round of funding. And I view that as a historic moment in the music industry. We're the only U.S. charity focused on music philanthropy in this manner. There's terrific. Nobody working in this, like trying to do it within the music industry, within the actual scene of music. Nobody's doing that. There's organizations, I should say, that work in recording kids, but then people age out. They age out at 18, right? Yeah. And then, there just really isn't help right here. There just is not. And so that's where we're coming from. So if we can meet our first round of funding, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do it. Just for full transparency, I don't make money off this. I'm not like secretly, I have people ask me, if I'm getting paid, and I just give them our balance sheet. And I say like, nope, here you go. Here's what
to our doing. Listeners, Max actually just lit a cigar with a lit $100 bill. So.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but it's Monopoly money, so the man can afford to play board games in his spare time.
Yeah, we will attack you on social media. Not attack you, but we will give you so much love. I'm going through all our social accounts right now to follow. We'll share.
Share the things going up there, and oh my God, is that a Vietnam-nominated dollar right there? What's up?
This is $100,000.
Here are the Vietnamese.
Yeah, here are the Vietnamese.
It's a 25 cents.
Yeah.
Just about.
Yeah, we word of mouth, sharing the things, artists that you may know, rich uncles that you may know, those sorts of things. But really just in this business, I'm here to raise friends, and that's going to raise funds.
I think the beauty of it is it just goes this, provided this is successful, and I don't doubt that it will be. I think it's going to be awesome. I hope I phrased that right, but you know what I'm saying.
I got it. I probably have the most doubt in this circle, because I have to live in the realm of holding all the hope and all the doubt at the same time.
Yeah, we didn't bring you on the show to laugh at you, no. But I think the beauty of it is, it's all Leo did to laugh at the word. How many times did you say penis this episode, Leo?
Those you talking about micro penises.
I don't know. You keep track of it. You always do. But it's just to increase the amount of music in the world from perspectives and experiences and individuals who are just woefully unheard from in history, and it's just the impact can be nothing but positive. And I'm happy to have you on the show. So glad we got to talk to you and learn more about this and identify more of the issues that are at the heart of this, your nonprofit, the Recording Fund, why it exists, to educate, to expose, and to increase just the amount of music that should be out there.
Yeah.
So, Max, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, Max,
thank all of you
for what you're doing. Yeah, we're so grateful to have you on, and it's I'm liking all your posts right now.
Thank you. Yeah, no, don't worry. I'll be coming through on the gram and finding you guys, and
Awesome. We definitely need to have you back on. And as a musician myself, we really appreciate what you're doing out there. We wish when we were younger we could have had somebody like you out there trying to help.
Yeah, you notice how we started the podcast as all grizzled musicians are like, this guy promising recordings, and we're like, by the end of it, we're like, oh man, you're actually doing something really awesome, because had someone like you and your organization approached me at 19, I wouldn't be an alcoholic.
Where were you when we needed you?
Come on, Max, retroactively.
Yeah, retromaxively,
Yes! Oh.
So, somewhere in there, I mean, that's the sort of conversation I have with pretty much most people. They say, like, I've wished something like this was out there a long time. I talk to producers that they're like, man, I have a 21-year-old kid that comes into my studio and he works his ass off to try to pay the bills and then pay me to come in here. And he's like, he should have some help, but he shouldn't also be absorbed into the label system until he's ready to be absorbed into that. So yes, I think we all wish this was there was just there can be both lanes. There should just be multiple lanes, in this industry as opposed to the one. It should not be monolithic.
And I think we're realizing that as a society and as creators, that, there are many ways, multiple outcomes. My success does not look like that person's success or yours.
Right. Yeah.
And you were adding exponentially to the world, and you're just making us like really all happy, proud, nerdy musicians here. So thank you for what you're doing. Go follow Recording Fund on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Those are just dancing videos of you, right, Max? Like, that's not necessarily affiliated, but if you want to follow on TikTok, you can.
Yeah.
You're really good at the worm. It's amazing. Ooh,
right on. Anything else you want to plug, Max?
That's it. Just follow the socials. Give if you can. Like my dancing. Should we just recap the whole show right now?
Yeah, let's chalk it down.
So where we started was. No, it's been great to be here with you folks. This is my first podcast in this capacity. It's actually my first podcast in general. So,
you're gonna see a lot of traffic from India.
Weird. No, not India. It's Indonesia.
Is it
Indonesia?
No, it's Malaysia.
Malaysia.
All right.
Yeah.
We're number 168 in Malaysia.
It's
right
Adam
now.
flying over to Malaysia from Vietnam.
Beautiful.
Don't worry, soon.
Our numbers are
Airspace
lousy.
issue.
It's lousy country. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Amazing.
Max, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Kurt,
Thank
you want to
you,
sign
guys.
off?
This was
Good luck
I'll
editing this. So
Yeah. This is actually not that
It'll be
bad. You should
enjoy.
have seen our last one. My God.
Oh.
We're leaving that in for our previous
Yep.
guest.
off, and if you want to gossip, we can gossip.
Max, thank you. I'm stalking you on Instagram right now. You will get a photo from the city of Tiger over here. That is right now.
okay.
No.
And
No.
us too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll do that
I
one
will
too.
follow
Yeah.
all of you guys.
Oh,
Awesome.
good night, you guys. This was
Good night,
Just One
everybody.
Song.